we would subject the Russian intelligence member we recently indicted to questioning by Russian agents. What on earth was he talking about? We're so caught up into whether he believes our own intelligence community. We're just drawing a blind eye to all the other crazy ideas that he actually proposed on the world stage deliberately.
That's my question. Did he, what else did the president go rogue on, or were those, in fact, in the talking points? Look, I said right here, prior to this Helsinki summit, and I said Donald Trump isn't going to give us nothing new. He is going to go in and do what he's always done, side with Putin. He has noted that even in the face of clear, sheer evidence, he is going to take the side of President Putin. So as I said then, I'm going to say now, what will Republicans on Capitol Hill do? I need more than just statements. I need more than just tweets. There are legislative things that Republicans on Capitol Hill can do. They have a majority in the Senate. If they wanted to pass legislation, they could. The fact that they haven't speaks broadly.
They have before, actually. They have before.
Well, the one thing I want to say, though, about this particular thing is Senator McConnell and Speaker Ryan came out and they did not use the president's name. They said a lot about Putin. They didn't say anything about Donald Trump. Although we saw folks like Congressman Will Hurd, Congressman Costello, they came out and they named Donald Trump. I think in this instance, it's really important to name names. And for Republicans who are not naming names, it says to me that they're scared. The president has ran away with our goddamn democracy. What are folks going to do about it?
Talk, if you would, about what it's like for Republicans on Capitol Hill who are trying to make this decision right now. They are all, with the exception of Rand Paul possibly, appalled. They can't believe what they heard yesterday. They can't believe the president continues to say these things. What's the decision when a Mitch McConnell or a Paul Ryan doesn't name the president, but instead just reaffirms what they believe, which completely contradicts the president?
Well, not only did they reaffirm what they believe, but they also laid out penalties for future election interference. I mean, McConnell was quite clear today about his views about Russia did meddle and that they shouldn't do it again and that there will be consequences for that. I keep hearing, what are the Republicans going to do? I follow a great military national security analyst on Twitter named John Noonan. He said, don't forget, they've already done several things. We've increased military spending, greater intelligence budget, more NATO exercises in the Baltic, lethal aid to the Ukraine, developing new low-yield nuclear weapons. We had the NATO resolution.
Yeah.
We've got discussions of new sanctions, the old sanctions. These are all things that Russia absolutely hates. And so the Republicans in Congress, Simone, have already stood up to Russia. You don't like what Trump is doing, but I think it's unfair to blame them for not doing enough.
Well, I do not think it's unfair because let me tell you, Congress is a co-equal branch of government, folks. So I appreciate everything that Republicans in Congress have done up until this point. But our president stood on the stage next to Vladimir Putin the other day and gave him a back rub, put lotion on his feet, proverbial lotion on the man's feet. And so my question is, and today he attempted to squirm out of what he said and then continued to step on all of it.
What do you want them to do?
I would like them to, they can censure the president. They can come out and say Donald Trump, Leader McConnell can do that, so can Speaker Ryan.
Mention his
name.
We
do not agree with you. I think that is a forceful show that we are standing up to not only Putin, but our own president. And I'll tell you, voters across the country have noted that they want a Congress to be a check on this president. Yeah. Folks going to lose their jobs
do what they did before,
if they can't do that.
And agreeing with both of you, the Senate passed 97-2 sanctions against Russia, which the president was against. Remember, he signed these sanctions under duress. There's a whole lot more that we can do on the sanctions side, perhaps starting in the legislative branch, to hit Russia where it actually hurts, which is their oil and gas sector. We know President Trump's not going to come up and do that by himself, right? We just saw what happened in Helsinki. Congress can do that. The Republicans can do that, working with the Democrats, and I actually think it has a shot of getting through.
What's also interesting, Amanda, is that what President Trump is doing is so at odds with not only what Republicans on Capitol Hill generally believe, but also what his own national security advisors want. I mean, John Bolton is one of the strongest Russia hawks out there, and it is surprising that he is now the national security advisor to this president who is saying and doing these things.
And that's where I think Congress needs to go. We need to find out what happened. If all his national security team gave him contradictory advice, he completely went rogue. I say that phrase deliberately because it seems that everyone else told him that he needed to make a strong statement. Something went wrong here. And Congress has an oversight function where it may come to public hearings, but I think they need to start pressuring the other cabinet members that may be very uncomfortable. I understand that. People like Dan Coats, I think, are patriots and did try to stand up and do the right thing. But things need to get uncomfortable to find out how we ended up here.
All right, everyone, stick around. We got a lot more to talk about. Big question. Did President Trump just play right into Democrats' hands with his, quote, clarification? Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey will join me live next. Stay with us. We're back with our breaking news, and now Democrats responding to President Trump, insisting he simply misspoke when he said Russia wouldn't interfere in the 2016 election. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer saying, quote, it's 24 hours too late and in the wrong place. Senator Mark Warner, the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, saying, I don't accept the president's comments today. If he wanted to make those comments, he should have had the strength to make them in front of Vladimir Putin. Let's talk about it with the panel. You know, something interesting, Simone, is there has been this whole debate within the Democratic Party of should we talk about Russia or should we not talk about Russia, with a lot of people saying the American people, this doesn't put food on their plate, on their tables. The Democrats can't fall into the trap about talking about this too much. Does this play a role in getting that issue back on the subject, or do you think Democrats will still talk about health care and jobs?
No, we're still going to continue to talk about health care, jobs, the economy, Donald Trump, the Trump administration putting kids in cages, because frankly, that's what resonates with the voters across the country. But I want to be clear that when folks say do not talk about Russia, we're saying that because, one, you can turn on the television and hear about Russia every single day, 24 hours a day, but you can't turn on your television and hear about the economy necessarily, or health care, or the farm bill. And that is why Democrats are focused on this type of messaging. But to be clear, you have seen a number of Democrats speak out on this issue because it's just egregious. Shouldn't be a Republican or a Democratic issue. This is an American issue. And what the president did yesterday and the performance we saw today was just inadequate. And Jake, I'm happy that that reporters like yourself and other folks are calling it what it is. And folks aren't running with these clickbait headlines of, oh, Donald Trump walked it back. You know, he now accepts the assessment. Because his contradictory statement in the talking points that were written out for him by his national security team totally negates all of that. That's why, in fact, folks are calling him a puppet, because he does things like this.
And we're also talking about it because the attack is still happening. So when we look at the 28 midterms, as much as we want to talk about domestic issues, we have to be clear-eyed about the fact that the Russians are still trying to actually interfere the very elections that we're talking about. That's why you have Kirsten Nielsen from DHS, Treasury Secretary, the DNI, making this a front and center issue for Republicans, for Democrats, and for the media.
I guess one of the questions is how seriously does President Trump take this? Because, Scott, during the CBS interview with President Trump, Jeff Glor, the anchor for CBS Evening News, read the quote from the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, a Trump appointee, saying that there are red alarms going off like before 9/11 in terms of attacks on the United States, cyber attacks on the United States, with Russia being the worst actor. And the president said that he didn't know that he agreed with Dan Coats. Does it matter if the commander-in-chief doesn't agree with all the people on the front line? Is it enough that they're there doing their job?
Well, I think he does agree. Otherwise, he wouldn't be implementing the sanctions, which are very tough. They wouldn't have gone after more military spending. He wouldn't have pushed the NATO allies to spend more on our mutual defense against Russia, ostensibly. So I think there has to be some agreement. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing those things. I think ultimately he needs to talk more about that. I mean, I was stunned yesterday and today that he didn't use the sanctions that they're implementing as a shield, because he did sign the sanctions. You said they were under duress, but he did sign it. This is under executive authority that he did it. And we're punishing them for interfering in the election. So if Donald Trump wanted to use that, he really could. And so I suspect he's going to have to say more about this in the days ahead. I want to see them pivot to talk about the things that he is doing that shows he is taking it seriously.
But I think the issue is that there are Republicans in Congress forcing him to do this. There are people in his administration forcing him to do this. But clearly, based on reporting and his public statements, his heart is not in punishing Russia.
No, and I sort of get frustrated when I hear Republican friends say, oh, the Trump administration has been so strong on Russia because he agreed to sign the bills that Congress passed. It would have taken such a massive amount of confrontation for the executive branch to veto those bills and to shred them and shut down the government.
They were passed with veto-proof majorities.
Yeah,
I mean, he couldn't have vetoed them.
Right. And so why are we even having that debate? He did it because Congress made him do it, which goes to the fact that Congress can make him do the right thing. And so while President Trump may be conflicted in whether he believes the intelligence community or not, Congress should not be. And they should drop these farce secondary investigations like that circus we saw with Peter Strzok last week that gave him 10 hours of questioning, yield very little information. And so these Republicans that have given Trump cover and tried to distract from the Mueller investigation need to drop it. The Mueller investigation should be protected. It should continue. If legislation needs to be passed, Republicans should do that, because everyone can see that for some reason, we don't know why, Donald Trump is conflicted on this question. So that investigation must continue and these sideshows should stop.
You know what was weird is that both in the Fox News interview of Vladimir Putin and also in his comments in the press conference, Vladimir Putin did not deny that he had compromising information on President Trump. And when asked directly did you want Trump to win and did you help him win? He said yes, and then he explained how he wanted Trump to win, and didn't address the question of whether he actually acted to help him win.
Look, Vladimir Putin is a villain that can't be trusted, that we know meddled in our elections, who said that Donald Trump was his preferred candidate. I'm not sure what else we need to know here. I am extremely concerned that folks from the administration and friends of the administration, not Scott, but other people, are contorting themselves to try to make excuses for this president. We have the facts here, and I just think it's so clear. It's crystal.
But this is also just a really good reminder that Vladimir Putin is really good at psychological operations. I mean, Vladimir Putin, 18 years as a KGB officer, almost 20 years leading Russia. That's 38 years of experience figuring out how to really mess with people's minds. He doesn't do anything by accident. So that whole show when he was standing next to President Trump and he kind of paused when asked that question about compromising information and then that interview, you have to know he thought very carefully about everything that he was doing just to make the president uncomfortable enough that his spine was up and that he was pretty worried about what Putin was doing.
And talking about playing into President Trump's insecurities, he said, well, when President Trump came to Russia, I didn't even know who he was. He doesn't deny that they had compromising information, but I didn't even know who he was. He was wealthy, but there are lots of wealthy people, much wealthier, almost insulting President Trump.
Yeah, he was like, he wasn't on my radar until he decided to run for president.
But do we really have to give Vladimir Putin all this credit for being some kind of rhetorical genius and making President Trump look uncomfortable on stage? I mean, these were just obvious dodges and deflections. There wasn't a great stagecraft to it. He dodged the question.
It was just evil in action is all. I mean, I just thought it was...
Well, maybe, yeah, and I'm just saying it was so obvious what it was.
I agree with Simone. He's a villain. I'm not giving him credit or believing anything
and really
he says.
Good at PSYOP.
Really, really fascinating. Would versus wouldn't. Where do we go from here? Stay with us. Breaking news this afternoon, President Trump today trying to change his words from yesterday's shocking news conference with President Putin. The President of the United States now facing unrelenting criticism over siding with the Russian leader and corroding support among many Republicans in Congress. CNN's Manu Raju now reports it could be why the president is changing his tune.
Republicans on Capitol Hill are stunned at President Trump's remarks aligning himself with Vladimir Putin. But they're struggling with how to respond.
You could say it's embarrassing, but I don't think that does it sufficient justice.
Really, the antics over the last 10 days have been damaging to our country.
Standing next to Putin in Finland, Trump flatly disputed the U.S. intelligence community's assessment that Russia interfered in the 2016 elections.
I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
That remarkable admission today forcing the Senate Majority Leader, a key ally of President Trump's, to do something equally remarkable, bypassing the White House to send a direct message to U.S. allies.
Make no mistake about it, I would say to our friends in Europe, we understand the Russian threat, and I think that is the widespread view here in the United States Senate among members of both parties.
But other Republicans called for their leadership to go a step further and take Trump to task.
Is it time for more of your colleagues to voice it?
It has been for a long time.
Yes. I mean, I just don't know what it'll take, frankly, for people to say, hey, this has gone too far.
Democrats demanded that administration officials testify before Congress to lay out exactly what Trump and Putin agreed to in private.
President Trump's public statements were alarming enough. The Senate needs to know what happened behind closed doors. Does anyone believe he was tougher on Putin in secret?
But Republican options are limited. They're discussing a legislative response, including possible new sanctions on Russia, or a symbolic resolution expressing support for the U.S. intelligence community. Yet the Trump press conference added another complication, especially for Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee, which previously disputed the intelligence community's finding that Putin wanted Trump to win in 2016, a fact Putin himself confirmed when asked if he wanted Trump to become president.
Yes, I did, because he talked about bringing the U.S.-Russia relationship back to normal.
Speaker Paul Ryan strongly criticized Russia, but would not walk back the House GOP's controversial finding.
Did the Republicans make a mistake in that report?
I'll refer you to the Intelligence Committee. What they were concerned about was the trade craft. But let's be very clear, just so everybody knows. Russia did meddle with our elections.
And several Republicans, Jake, on the House Intelligence Committee continue to stand by that assertion, questioning whether or not Putin, in fact, wanted Trump to win. But also, Jake, behind closed doors, the House Republican Conference and the Senate Republicans, when they met separately today, they did not discuss what happened in that Trump-Putin summit, a sign that even though the Republicans are voicing their concerns publicly, privately, they're hoping to change the subject. Jake. All right,
Manu Raju on Capitol Hill, thanks so much. Joining me now, the Republican Congressman from Utah, Chris Stewart. He's on the House Intelligence Committee. He's also an Air Force veteran. Congressman, the president attempted to do some cleanup this afternoon, saying that he misspoke and he sides with his intelligence agencies. What was your response?
Yeah. Well, if it was an attempt to clean up, he needed a pretty big broom. I mean, I was pretty vocal yesterday in the sense that I love this president. I support his policies generally. I think he's trying to serve our country and make things better for people, but he was just wrong yesterday. He was wrong on a couple fronts. One is to say that the intelligence community and not to stand by them and say that, you know, they got it exactly right. There's absolutely no question that Russia tried to interfere with our election. I think what the president maybe conflates sometimes is there's a difference between attempting to interfere and then these other allegations of collusion, which we have no evidence about that to this point, and I actually don't believe that there was, but I think the president often melds those two together when they really are separate issues. And then the second thing, Jake, is Russia is not our friend. They're not our ally. They would destroy democracy and freedom everywhere in the world if they could, because they don't want us to stand as an example to his people of what they could have, and he is denying them. And I think our foundation with Russia, I want to have a relationship with them. I want to have conversations, but it's got to be built on that understanding that, once again, they're not our ally. They do not seek to benefit our nation.
So, Congressman, I've heard Republicans on Capitol Hill today, though not you, but I've heard Republicans on Capitol Hill say that they take the president at his word that he misspoke. But I want to play the sound from President Trump saying that he misspoke, because if you listen to his full statement, including what he ad-libs afterwards, he very clearly still doubts the intelligence community's assertion that it was Russia and Russia alone. He says it could have been other people. Let's run that sound from this afternoon.
I accept our intelligence community's conclusion that Russia's meddling in the 2016 election took place. Could be other people also. There's a lot of people out there.
Could be other people also. There's a lot of people out there. Isn't he contradicting the intelligence community in this statement in which he's asserting that he believes the intelligence community?
Well, no, I think both things could be true, and he's alluding that, you know, look, China clearly hits us every day with cyber attacks. So does Iran, so does North Korea, a bunch of other countries. But the focus is, in 2016, is on Russia. Russia was the country. Vladimir Putin was the leader who said we want to go in and mess with their elections. Jake, I was in Moscow in the August before the election. I came home. This is well before other people were talking about this. I said they're going to mess with our elections. It didn't take a genius to see that. They'd done it throughout Europe. And so, yeah, in a very technical sense, the president is right. There are other actors out there in the cyber world, other elements that want to harm our democracy. But look, this is about Russia. It's about 2016. I think that's where we should maintain our focus.
With all due respect, sir, I don't think if the intelligence community says it was Russia, that it also could be other people.
No, I agree. I agree with you. That's what I said. I mean, there are other people out there who are, attacking us every day. But this is a focus on Russia. This is a focus on their efforts in 2016. We don't have evidence that China was trying to interfere like they were during the election, or like the Russians were during the election.
So if the United States was attacked by Russia and President Trump expressed support and belief in the person who led the attack on the United States, how do you have faith in the commander-in-chief to protect the United States?
Well, I'm going to disagree entirely with the premise of your question. When you say he supports this person standing next to him, I don't think that's true at all. It's President Trump who challenged NATO to pony up and to pay their dues. Why? So that they can confront Russia. It's President Trump who, with the help of Congress, has increased significantly our defense spending. Why? So that we can, among others, defend ourselves against Russia aggression. It's President Trump and this administration who have policies that will keep the price of oil and energy low, which is one of the most harmful sanctions we can have against Russia. It's President Trump and others who have imposed sanctions on Russia. So Look, he made a mistake yesterday. There's no question about that. He needs to fix that, and I believe he's tried. But I think it's an incredible stretch to say that he supports Vladimir Putin and that will harm our national security. His actions have clearly been with the intent of defending not only America's, but NATO's interests as well, the rest of the free world. And I think those are the things that really matter, not what was probably ineloquently said at best, and I'm trying to be gracious, ineloquently said at a press conference.
Do you have any concerns about what President Trump might have said to Vladimir Putin behind closed doors with no other administration officials there?
Well, no, as I actually said this before, I'm glad he met with President Putin. I think it was necessary for us to try to develop relationships, so long as it's based on, as I expressed to you earlier, kind of a real world view of their view towards the United States. And if they have a private meeting, I don't have any particular concern with that. And I think kind of the premise of the question is, once again, well, we know he's a Russian stooge, and we know they're secretly collaborating against America. I just frankly think that's silliness. I don't think that's true at all. And I think we'll eventually, and probably in a short time, get a pretty good readout on what they discussed together.
Well, just to be clear, I'm not saying that I think President Trump is a Russian stooge, but I think it's pretty clear he's expressed publicly and privately that he has an affinity for Vladimir Putin. He wants to work closely with Vladimir Putin, and he's willing to insult almost every single person on the planet except for Vladimir Putin, and I think that's curious. Well,
and I wouldn't necessarily argue with your description there. I mean, he does seem to go after our friends, and it's a bit of a family squabble. I think it was necessary, once again, for NATO and others. And by the way, Jake, I wasn't saying that I felt like you believe that about
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make
I just think, but some people actually do. And I just think that's an unfair characterization of the president's intentions.
Republican Congressman Chris Stewart of Utah, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your time, as always. Again, this backlash is in response to what President Trump said publicly. Now some lawmakers are demanding to know what was actually said between President Trump and President Putin behind closed doors. Stay with us.
Now, President Putin denied having anything to do with the election interference in 2016. Every U.S. intelligence agency has concluded that Russia did. My first question for you, sir, is who do you believe? My second question is, would you now, with the whole world watching, tell President Putin, would you denounce what happened in 2016, and would you warn him to never do it again?
So let me just say that we have two thoughts. You have groups that are wondering why the FBI never took the server. Why haven't they taken the server? Why was the FBI told to leave the office of the Democratic National Committee? I've been wondering that. I've been asking that for months and months, and I've been tweeting it out and calling it out on social media. Where is the server? I want to know, where is the server, and what is the server saying? With that being said, all I can do is ask the question. My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be. But I really do want to see the server, but I have confidence in both parties. I really believe that this will probably go on for a while, but I don't think it can go on without finding out what happened to the server, what happened to the servers of the Pakistani gentleman that worked on the DNC. Where are those servers? They're missing. Where are they? What happened to Hillary Clinton's emails? 33,000 emails, gone, just gone. I think in Russia they wouldn't be gone so easily. I think it's a disgrace that we can't get Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails. So I have great confidence in my intelligence people. but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. I think that's an incredible offer.
Trump. Here's a guy who has called Haiti and African nations S-hole countries. Here's a guy who in 1973, as you've already indicated, was found in a judgment by the Department of Justice to be a discriminatory person when it came to black people. The Central Park Five, he called for their death, and even after they were exonerated, he still said it was outrageous. The reality is that we're talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson. He looks at stars, he looks through telescopes. Is he an astrophysicist? Well, the reality is this. Donald Trump talks like a racist, thinks like a racist, makes statements like a racist, conjures emotions that give succor and support to white supremacists and white nationalists. Yeah, he's a racist because racism is as racism does. So this attempt to avoid it, and here's the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, it's not the white supremacists who are the problem, it's white moderates and conservatives who tend to be complicit with that by trying to dismiss it. That's part of the problem we're confronting here in America. And until white folk like you can stand up and find your spine, you will continue to be complicit in the racist animus of this country.
Welcome to Shydux Media. Racism, political divisiveness, and hate has been trending in the news for a while now. But can you believe that lynching is not considered as a federal hate crime in America? Well, if you're shocked by this, you're not alone. Get this. Just a few days ago, the Senate's lone black members, Senator Kamala Harris, Senator Cory Booker, and Senator Tim Scott, introduced a bill that would make lynching a federal hate crime for the first time in history. Wow. The legislation comes amidst concerns about an increase in hate crimes and racist demonstrations that have rocked the country since Donald Trump took office. But as the New York Times notes, lawmakers have attempted to bring forward bills targeting lynching specifically for more than 100 years. If this isn't bad enough, listen to this. Nearly 200 anti-lynching bills were introduced in Congress from 1882 to 1986. None were approved. Can you believe this? But thanks to these senators, the new law would make lynching a federal offense punishable by a maximum sentence of life in prison. What's your thought on this? Leave your comment below. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to share and subscribe. Welcome to Shydux Media. Racism, political divisiveness, and hate has been trending in the news for a while now. But can you believe that lynching is not considered as a federal hate crime in America? Well, if you're shocked by this, you're not alone. Get this. Just a few days ago, the Senate's lone black members, Senator Kamala Harris, Senator Cory Booker, and Senator Tim Scott, introduced a bill that would make lynching a federal crime for the first time in history. Wow. The legislation comes amidst concerns about an increase in hate crimes and racist demonstrations that have rocked the country since Donald Trump took office. But as the New York Times notes, lawmakers have attempted to bring forward bills targeting lynching specifically for more than 100 years. If this isn't bad enough, listen to this. Nearly 200 anti-lynching bills were introduced in Congress from 1882 to 1986. None were approved. Can you believe this? But thanks to these senators, the new law would make lynching a federal offense, punishable by a maximum sentence of life in prison. What are your thoughts on this? Leave your comment below. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share and subscribe.